All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're deconstructing a fascinating psychological system, one that's all about attraction. But here's the twist. According to the source material, it works best when you're not even trying. Sounds impossible, right? Well, let's see how it's supposed to work.
So right off the bat, we're hit with this central paradox. How can you possibly attract someone without actively trying to? Because the whole philosophy here is that the moment you start pushing, the moment you start chasing, you've already lost. So what on earth is the alternative?
Okay, so the absolute bedrock of this entire system is a principle the source calls the invisible magnet, and has nothing to do with what you do and everything to do with how you are. It's about how you just exist.
I mean, this quote really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? The idea is that attraction isn't supposed to be a hunt, it's a gravitational pull. The goal isn't to go out and chase someone down, but to focus on your own value, your own shine. And that's what's meant to naturally, effortlessly pull other people in.
So let's look at this contrast, because it's huge. On one side, you've got what the source calls the average guy. He's basically broadcasting neediness. He texts back way too fast. He tries way too hard to impress. His attention is like free candy. It's everywhere, so it's not worth anything. But the invisible magnet, that's a whole different energy. His presence is calm, kind of detached. By not giving his attention away so freely, he creates this vacuum that just naturally pulls in curiosity.
So, why does this actually work? Well, it's tapping into some pretty fundamental psychological triggers. First, you've got scarcity. Pretty simple. When your attention isn't just handed out to everyone, it automatically seems more valuable. Then, your non-neediness. That totally breaks the pattern people are used to, which sparks intense curiosity. And that curiosity, that little voice in their head asking, wait, why isn't this person chasing me like everyone else? That is what the source claims is the very first seed of attraction.
Okay, so if being an invisible magnet is the foundation, the passive part, this next principle is where you start to get a little more active. It's called the Dissonance Hook, and it's all about creating some serious mental and emotional engagement. This is where things get interesting.
And at the core of this hook is a classic psychological concept, cognitive dissonance. See, our brains absolutely crave consistency. They hate being confused. So when you give someone two conflicting ideas at the same time, like, say, they feel both liked and challenged by you, it creates this inner tension, and their brain will not rest until it figures that tension out.
So how do you actually do this? The source lays it out as a simple two-step play. First, you give approval. Warmth, a genuine compliment, you're really listening. Then, right at that moment when they're feeling comfortable, you gently introduce a tiny bit of doubt. The example here is perfect. You're really fun to talk to, but I don't know if you could keep up. You see that? Approval, followed by a playful challenge. It makes you impossible to just file away in a simple little box.
This little contradiction creates what's called an open loop. It's like an unfinished thought. The brain can't just categorize you and move on. So it's forced to keep thinking about you, circling back, trying to solve the puzzle of who you are. And all that mental real estate you're suddenly occupying, that is investment. And that, according to the source, is how attraction really starts to build.
Okay, so we've got the core principles down, this calm, magnetic presence, and the strategic use of dissonance. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty and see how this theory gets translated into actual specific communication techniques.
This is a really key distinction. A direct command, like text me later, is super obvious. It's like a wall you can either agree to or push against. But an embedded command, that's different. It frames the idea as just a general observation about people. It's designed to slide right past their conscious defenses and feel like it was their own idea all along.
And just look at how these are built. You've got phrases like, most people find that, or, the funny thing about a vibe like this is, see the pattern? It takes you and your desires out of the picture. Instead, the action you want, like them thinking about you, is presented as just this natural, inevitable thing that just happens.
Now this next technique, man, it leverages another incredibly powerful piece of our psychology, our need for commitment and consistency. We are hardwired to act in ways that are consistent with what we've already said or done. We will bend over backwards to defend the conclusions we make about ourselves. The source calls this the commitment trap, and it's a three-step move. First, you create a very clear choice, an easy way out. Something like, hey, your friends are heading out, you should probably go catch them. Now, if she stays, you move to step 2. You spotlight that choice. Wow, look at you, choosing to stay. Then comes the final and most important step. You make her explain it.
This right here, This is the knockout question. When you ask this, her brain has to go to work to find an answer. And whatever reason she gives, oh, I just like talking to you, or you're interesting, she is now saying out loud her own reasons for being attracted to you. She's not just agreeing with you, she's agreeing with herself. And that is 1,000 times more powerful.
So let's pull all these threads together. Let's zoom out and see what the whole playbook looks like when all these different parts are working together.
So, let's put it all together. The entire system starts with your calm, non-needy presence. That alone is enough to break the pattern people expect, and it automatically triggers curiosity.
Then you build on that foundation with your playful tease, that mix of approval and challenge. That's what creates the cognitive dissonance we talked about, that little spark of tension that makes an interaction really memorable.
Meanwhile, your embedded commands are working in the background, subtly planting ideas about future connection and interest without ever setting off those conscious alarm bells. It just feels natural.
And this is so crucial. By offering choices and then making her justify them, you're essentially getting her to write her own story of why she's attracted to you. The reasons have to come from her side to feel real to her.
And finally, your timing. Knowing when to end the conversation, often at a high point, cements the idea that your time and attention are valuable, scarce resources. You see how every single piece just reinforces all the others? And that's really the master key to this whole system. The attraction feels so powerful and so real precisely because it doesn't feel like you did anything. From her perspective, she made all the choices. She wrote the story. She created the bond.
So, at the end of the day, this whole system is designed to make the attraction feel like it was their idea all along, which leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? By breaking attraction down into a system of psychological levers and traps, are we just solving a puzzle, or are we risking turning a deeply human experience into something cold and calculated? That's the real thing to think about. Thanks for diving in with us.